Welcome to Creative Brews. I'm Kristen, and this is your weekly dose of creativity, where photography, design, and life come together. So, grab your favorite drink, and let's talk about what's brewing. All right, welcome back to Creative Brews. I'm your host, Kristen, and today is going to be a little bit of a different episode today. So, I think I've done this one time before where I was on one of my little walks. And I was like, you know what? It would be pretty cool to do an episode while walking. And I may have done it one other time. So this is like the third time that I've done it. I thought it was a good idea. But sometimes when you're on your walks or runs or whatever you're doing, sometimes you just want to do that and just kind of take nature in and soak it all in instead of, I guess having to think about things and whatnot. But sometimes it helps me to take my mind off of walking or running, just because it's all a mental game, so if you don't mentally want to do something, you're most likely going to try your best to talk your way out of it, so and again, there's not really one topic that I really want to talk about. I guess this is going to be kind of like a check-in. I know Mother's Day just passed, and it's been a little while since I've done like an update episode and everything. So, yes, where to start? There's a lot going on. A lot of positive things, of course. Life be lifing, for the lack of better words. There's a long list of things. So, yeah, life has just been amazing. In a nutshell, it's been amazing. I do not have anything to complain about, or anything like that. I always try to practice mindfulness. And I know a lot of times people hear that and they don't really know what I mean. They think, oh, Jesus or spirituality and stuff like that, which I guess to each his own, but it's more so kind of like a daily, I try to make it a daily thing to check in with me, what's going on. It's kind of like almost you sit down with yourself for coffee or something like that, or like it's a therapy session and you're the therapist and you're checking in with yourself and sitting down with yourself and, just going through all the senses, and it's about your life. I have a lot of topics to talk about and some upcoming episodes to talk about and stuff like that. So, yeah, there's a lot of things planned as I'm gasping for air. Currently, I'm on a walk. My fiance is on a run. That's kind of what we do. We walk together, and then we kind of branch off, and he'll go do his run, and I do my walk. Now, I do jogs, is what I like to call them, or like spurts, more or less is what it's called, spurts of running and spurts of jogging, basically. Yeah, just, trying to continue to work on myself. This is a daily thing. And that's where a lot of times it gets hard is to stay consistent. Consistency is key. Now I've gotten a lot better. My endurance has gotten a lot better, so I'm very proud of myself. What was I talking about a minute ago? So this is why a lot of times I don't really do a lot of like off the cuff episodes, but I guess to go back to what I was saying, which is the mindfulness part, to everyone else and to each person, mindfulness in a nutshell is going to mean something different for you. So what it might mean for me is going to probably mean something different for you, so there's not I don't really believe that there's a quote unquote right way to practice mindfulness. For me, it's a lot of disconnecting from distractions. I think that's, in a nutshell, for me, I think that is the absolute best way I could put that. Lately, it's been disconnecting from the noise, especially the digital noise, and really trying to, I kind of feel like, I guess this could be for anyone, but kind of feel like I owe it to myself to stay tuned into the why, the who, what, when, where, why, that whole situation, or that whole analysis, I guess you could say. But yeah, just really like on the daily, sit down with myself and have coffee. What are you noticing? What do you not like? What do you want to change? All kinds of stuff, I'm definitely someone who has always been like, ooh, I should reinvent myself this way, or I should reinvent myself that way, so it's pretty easy for me to, and I'm sorry if this is loud, this is kind of the reason why, another reason I kind of stopped doing these, because there's like a wood bridge that we kind of walk on. It's kind of bumpy, but I was thinking, for mindfulness walks, it would be great to, do this check-in. It kind of sometimes helps to brain dump, which is also a part of mindfulness. And see, not a lot of people are talking about all these things. They're kind of just talking about like the buzzwords of mindful living or slow living, aligned living. There's all kinds of terms. The woo-woo side of things, and yeah, all kinds of things. But for me, it's really just doing a bird's eye view of an analysis on where I'm at in my life. Where can I better myself? Where can I better my life? And now it's kind of like, well, not kind of, but it is now my son is included with that. So now it's no longer just all about me. It's, me and our son. Like I said, brain dumps, whether you keep a journal or something like that, it really helps. Especially if you have an idea and you kind of just blab it all out and then you go back and listen to it. Sometimes it's a good idea and sometimes you're like, that doesn't make sense. So anyways, this is kind of like a brain dump for me, which also helps on my walks and stuff like that too. Kind of just move the energy out, because I do know one thing: everything is energy. Everything runs on a frequency, and all I have to say is if you think I sound crazy, that's your opinion, but when you do your research, everything is a frequency. We're all on our different, all on our own frequencies. And I mean, I've talked a lot about that. That's the reason why I created the Protect Your Frequency. It was called Protect Your Energy, but I renamed it to something that sounds, I think, more aligned and more in tune. No pun intended. It really helps to move the old energy that you're not using out of your body. Get that old energy out, because if you're hanging on to old energy, I kind of feel like that also kind of creates anxiety. And I feel like some of the best quote unquote medicine is walking, running, brain dumping, you know what I mean? So it really helps me to move my energy. And while I'm doing that, not only is it helping me mentally to help, clear your mind, and maybe from this I come up with a way better idea than I did before, and then you can profit from that. So from a business standpoint, you can kind of see what I'm talking about, which is also the reason why I created the Align Design Wisdom. So yes, there's a lot of things that I have created and I am creating, and I keep building on and building on, but it's all coming from an aligned state. When you can tap into alignment, which comes from, I think, moving your energy, it comes from spending time with yourself, which is something that not a lot of people are comfortable doing. A lot of us in our society, I know I just talked about the societal norms and stuff like that. And here lately I've been saying we live in a society and all this stuff. But it's so true when you look at the patterns, you look at the history, and, I'm not saying any of it is right or wrong. What I'm saying is that people are looking at things differently. And, yeah, when you notice the patterns and stuff, you just kind of start noticing things differently, and maybe even experiencing things in a different light and in a different way. And it also depends on where you're at in your life and on your life journey, what has happened to you, and all that stuff. Traumatic events, not traumatic events, and stuff like that. All the mindfulness, the spirituality stuff, all of this comes from really just me finally tapping into me and not being afraid of sounding and looking crazy to some people, because where it all actually truly starts is in the eye of the beholder, okay? So, I'm sure we've all heard of that term in like an artistic way or artsy way, or, well, what message do you see from this painting? It's basically the same thing. Like, that's a great example, because let's say 10 to 20 people look at the same painting, the same piece of art, right? Well, they are all going to interpret the art in most likely 10 different ways. And it really just stems from the observer effect. So you are the observer, and you perceive the event or events in a way that resonates with you. And I know that kind of basically just touches the surface. It doesn't really get into the nitty-gritty, the nuts and bolts of what I'm talking about here. But I am on a walk, so, I haven't really, I've been doing a lot of, like, not only self-work and stuff like that, but just sharing about my journey, what I'm learning, what I already have known. I've always been drawn to philosophy and wisdom, mindfulness, and stuff like that. I've always been the quote-unquote tree hugger. You can even ask my mom. If I see, an animal on the side of the road, all those things, like, I will move the animal out of the way. Or if a squirrel darts out in front of me and you can't help that, I don't, of course, I always try to be safe, but I always try to miss the squirrel in a safe way, of course. Now, if it's a turtle, of course, you already know. If I can safely, I will pull over and go help the squirrel. I mean, the turtle. So yeah, like I think I've touched on before in a different episode, I think I used the example of a movie. And yeah, it depends on the movie, and whatnot, but anyways, similar. So, except we're all looking at a nice, maybe complicated, maybe abstract piece of art, and we all know that we're going to see it differently. We're going to interpret it differently. We're all going to get a different message from it, and all those things. I think when you are on a similar path as someone who maybe you also practice mindfulness in your own way and stuff like that, because like I said, I really don't believe that you should do it in a particular way. I think if you're someone who's listening and tuning in and you're just getting into mindfulness, or maybe you've been in it for a while, I hope that number one, you all can gain information from my episodes. I hope that you know that there's no one way of practicing mindfulness and living a truly abundant and mindful life. These are all things that I'm so grateful that I finally have truly just have done the shadow work, have done the self-work period, and to be able to have these conversations and all this stuff. Like, I've always been someone I've always felt like I have been deeply connected with the earth and with nature, and I think that is the reason why I fell into photography, because photography for me wasn't just oh well, let me do this for money, let me do this, portraits and whatever. No, like I got, like, when people were like, oh, well, what kind of photography do you do? It was hard for me to niche down. But yes, it was so hard for me to niche down and be like, oh, well, I only do family portraits or whatever. No. Photography started for me when I was 16 with a little point and shoot Samsung camera. I think I still have it. I used it for just that. I would point and shoot. And then I got crafty with it and started trying to make it do stuff that, you wouldn't normally use a point and shoot for. Like, trying to focus it on a flower and the background's blurry. Stuff like that. Blurry, artistic, artsy images, stuff like that. So that's where it all began. Then I started doing nature photography and stuff like that. Got really, 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 I just loved, I would get lost in it. And so I believe that's when the mindfulness truly started for me. And also I've always felt very connected to music as well. And I guess you could just say I've always felt very connected to artsy things, period. So very connected, very, get lost in it and stuff like that, which wasn't a big aha moment really, because I started in fine arts anyway. That was my first love. And then it quickly evolved into sort of like the media side of things. And I've always been someone who loves doing multimedia, so it's mixed media, and just basically combining things that you wouldn't normally put together and doing that and making art out of it. And so that is actually one of my traditions that I do with my son, with our son. He's our son, but I say my son because it sounds grammatically correct, I guess. So that's a tradition that I actually do with our son. Every Mother's Day, I've decided, you know what, let's do a piece of art together, So it'll evolve over the years and stuff like that, but I just want to share the world with our son and truly just show him that there are different ways to do things. There's different ways to live. You don't have to live by the societal norms. You don't have to put yourself in a box with a label, with a time and day, or time and date, stuff like that. Like, you can be fluid. You can try new things. You can do things, and, the trial and error of life. So, that's basically, in a nutshell, I think, everything. Just wanted to touch on, surface level wise, mindful living, what that means to me, and what it could sort of look like, and all this stuff, as well as, I guess, a little bit of an update. If you're tuning in and you have questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out. DM me, comment below, all the things. As well as check out my book. It's called The Daily Divine, a book of soulful truths and everyday wisdom. It is, I don't know that I've shared this before, but it is going to be a series book, so there's going to be more to come. And I've been asked quite a bit, am I writing any other books or anything like that? I've been also asked that I should write a kids book. So, we'll see about the kids book, but I do have other books, that I'm writing. I do have other books that I'm currently working on. Now that I've been through the book thing once, there's a lot of things that I could have done better. Like, to allow myself enough time and all this stuff. I kind of sort of rushed it in some ways, or to some degrees. So this time around, definitely going to try to take the time to really sit with them, because there's more than one book. Again, y'all all know me. I have in my notepad app, I have like all kinds of stuff that I write down. I've got quotes. I've got, especially with the weekly divine boosts that I've been doing, I have an active list of quotes for that. I have video and episode ideas written down that I get, sporadically. What else? I've got all kinds of stuff in my notepad app. I have my active list of the books that I want to do and their titles and stuff like that. I do want to do, like, talk more about the book, like what I could have done better, or what I've learned, or, stuff like that. I do have a story time. I don't know if I'll talk about it, but maybe I can talk about it in a very generic and vague way, because I'm not trying to, talk bad about someone or bash someone, because I'm truly not about that life. Like, I definitely believe that people pay their own prices in whichever way that means and looks like, but very in a karma way. But I do want to talk about I was trying to do like a collab situation with a bookstore, basically, that's in the area, and yeah, so I just want to kind of talk about that. I think that would be interesting. Anyways, that might be an upcoming episode. There's a lot of thoughts, a lot of, I should do this and all this other stuff, but we'll see. I mean, only time will tell, right? So we'll see what all I can do and whatnot. So, but yes, business side of things, I get asked about that often. Oh, let me wrap up the book. So the Daily Divine is going to be a series. So the first one is a book of soulful truths and everyday wisdom, and I have left an Easter egg on or in this book that hints toward what the next one will be called. So the next one will be the Daily Divine, again, because it's a series. But it'll be called something else. So that's fun. I didn't necessarily in the beginnings like sit down and say, you know what, this is going to be a series. But I left it open, open interpretation for it could lead into a series. And honestly, I have gotten a lot more, like, not that I thought I was going to get bad reviews, but you never know about these things. So I have really received a lot of good feedback and reviews, and I'm kind of just like, man, like, this is amazing because I really think that if more people can tap into the mindfulness side of things, they would truly be living a happy and an abundant life that they desire, So, yes, it just makes me happy to try to help people in that way. Anyways, you can buy the book as a physical book, ebook, and now it's narrated by me. So, yes, and produced by, of course, KBCreativeNC. So, yeah, it's amazing. This new journey has been amazing. So that kind of leads into the business side of things. It takes audacity. It takes being what people say nowadays, delusional. It takes being lonely. It takes being consistent, determination, courage, being okay with taking risks, but not risks to where you're like, well, I don't know what is going to happen from this, but risks that you're like, you know what, I am going to benefit from this, and my business is going to benefit, or these business owners are going to benefit, so because it's a double-edged sword, I guess you could say. Needless to say, the business side of things is building and going really well, and is just amazing to see things grow, to see things change and evolve and stuff like that. And I do plan on talking more on that. You get your walk in, and you get to see wildlife and move your energy out of your body into something productive, and then results that you can see. Like, yes, it's truly amazing. There's also a future episode that I really want to talk about and do. And it's kind of, I heard something either the other day or the other week where life is all about, it's funny because you go through life chasing the corporate job and the title and the material things, and then this and that and the other. And then you get older and you quickly realize none of those things matter. Because, not to get dark, but I mean, we're all living this life, and we all do not know how long we have on this earth. And so I think it's funny that we spend a lot of our adult life chasing that, to only quickly realize that what really matters is getting back to the childlike wonder of life and what fires you up and makes you want to get up out of bed in the morning and live a life that you truly want to live, instead of just being on autopilot, like I said in one of my other episodes, and just moving through life in a very meh way. So yeah, that's a future episode that I really want to talk about. So anyways, I think I've kind of touched on everything. Of course, we're still wedding planning and stuff like that, and going and looking at venues and things, which has been very exciting. Anyways, I've thought about doing a more in-depth episode on wedding planning. It's been very exciting, but also at the same time, I'm just like, I see why people elope now. Just saying. Like, if anyone that knows me personally is tuning in, I hope you don't get offended by that, but I think you can kind of agree, maybe talk about that in a separate episode, because a lot of these ideas that I've kind of blabbed about, you can kind of go into more depth about and stuff like that. But yeah, anyways, now I can kind of see why people go and elope. Because not only is it super expensive, but they just put in all these wedding packages a lot of things that you don't need. At least for us, because we're trying to be very intentional and choose what feels aligned to us, as well as, sentimental and all this other stuff. So I think that's about it. I feel like I've talked about a lot of different things, and hopefully it all makes sense, and hopefully I've wrapped stuff up. Anyways, again, thank you all for the support. It definitely helps. And again, if anybody has any comments or anything like that, you can leave them below. Be sure to check out the show notes below. All my links are there, as well as checking out my book. So yeah, I will talk at you all in the next episode. Bye.